Hey everyone, thank you for joining us for our Ignite Azure Scaling Show series. My name's Anna. I'll be your producer for this session. I'm an event planner for Reactor, joining you from Redmond, Washington. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenters and hosts to answer. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Reactor channel. With that, I'll turn it over to our host and presenter for the day. Thanks so much for joining.
Awesome. Super excited to be here. Hello to all of our viewers. This is but another episode in our Azure Ignite Skilling series. We've talked about basically everything under the sun at this point, from AI apps and agents to migrate and modernize, even a little bit of databases with PostgreSQL. But super excited to talk about AI agents and Cosmos DB today. As a reminder, my name is Aaron Stark. I am doing all things skilling and developer skilling related. And I'm joined today by an incredible expert, Jasmine, who I'll pass it to introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jasmine. I am a senior cloud advocate, focusing specifically on databases here at Microsoft. So I am super excited to talk all things data, all things databases.
Awesome. Super excited to have you here. Now, I know you have a couple different things for us today to go through, but I figured before we jump into everything, just to level set with our viewers and hear a little bit more about your thoughts on databases, especially in this era of AI. Specifically, would love to know kind of just what you're thinking around Cosmos DB and being the database that AI apps can leverage and use. What makes it different from other databases that also can leverage AI?
Yeah, so one of the things about Cosmos DB and actually all databases on the Microsoft platform is that you have the ability to do vector search. And the nice thing about that is that you have the option of putting your vectors and your data together. So in like kind of the early beginnings of really like Gen AI taking off, the abilities for developers to build their own AI apps, there came vector databases. And what's so important about that is being able to find context in your data. So in the past, you do a simple search, you're looking for like usually by keyword. And what vector search does for you is enable you to look for things that might be related to what you're looking for, but not exactly, doesn't have to be it to a T. And with additional patterns like retrieval augmented generation, it makes it even easier to really search for that context, because now you're working alongside an LLM with your task at hand or whatever your prompt might be, as well as your context, which is your data. So when it coming back to Cosmos DB, I think one of the things that makes Cosmos DB such a great database for AI apps is that you have the ability to store unstructured data, or what we like to call NoSQL data. So, if you have something that's maybe you have an app that's changing all the time, you're adding new things. So think about like you have like a rewards program, for example, and you want to expand that. It's rapidly growing, expanding. You want to be able to add additional data on the fly, right, without having to change the structure of change the schema. So that's one of the really nice things, especially with AI, with the rapid growth, things are changing. You want to be able to do that. Another thing that is really great about Cosmos DB is that the ability to store memory. I would highly suggest that if any of you are interested in that, I can find the link. But there's an amazing session with some folks from the Cosmos DB team where they are talking about building agentic memory with Azure Cosmos DB. There's a lot of really cool features and tool sets in there for you to do that. And I can talk a little bit more about some of the things that have come to Cosmos DB since Ignite 2025. I have some really cool visuals to walk through that as well.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for kind of just giving a little bit more overview, especially when we're talking about the vector bases versus unstructured data. I think you made a lot of good points around why Cosmos is one of our premier choices for databases, especially here at Azure. With that, I'll pass it to you to get us started and some of the information and demos that you brought for us today.
Sure. So I'm going to hop into my presentation here. And, I think one of the things, through this entire series, we've been pretty clear on like what is an agent. At this point, we know what it is. And so here on my slide, I just have a little bit of a description or a visual of what an agent is. So at its core, just making sure that I have my visual up here for my slides. But at its core, an agent is a program. It's a program that's powered by an LLM to help you decide the control flow of your program. So essentially, you can kind of think of it like kind of like a microservice that can execute tasks and achieve specific business outcomes. Let me make sure that my slides are visible. Okay, let me see and make sure my slides are not visible. Yeah, my slides are not visible quite yet. I believe.
No worries. I think it might just be like a little connection issue.
Okay.
We might need to wait for it to refresh in the background.
Okay. Great. Well, then I'll just keep talking. So the nice thing is that, with agents, you can kind of fine tune them without having to rebuild the entire system, right? And so even if they're not, a collection, even if our applications aren't really like a collection of tiny agents coordinating with each other, you can kind of helps you focus on that idea of modularity. So,
right.
I think one of just kind of going back to my computer science days, this idea of modularity when you have these separate, like either functions or classes doing these separate things, and because they have specific responsibilities. And it's so interesting because it's the same concept that we're using here with agentic systems now. Yeah. So, right, you just have one agent for a particular task. So another thing that agents also come with is not only things like input. So your agent messages talking to each other, user messages, user messages externally from end users, and then also things like system events just waiting on something to happen in your app. That's those types of inputs that you can expect. And then the agent also can be outfitted with things like tools. So one of the interesting tools that I have built for a demo that I'll show a little later is being able to use vector search in Azure Cosmos DB to grab some additional data. Another tool that is another tool that you can kind of wield is things like actions. So, reacting to a particular workflow or something that's happening in your app as well. And then finally, things like memory. So looking up past conversations, looking up, I think one of my favorite features of this is ChatGPT's app, where I think it's a pro feature, so like a subscription based feature, but like essentially like it will like save particular important tidbits about like the conversations you're having. So for example, I teach part-time, and so when I'm like this point, ChatGPT knows that I teach JavaScript and Python in my my apps, or sorry, in my classes, and so it knows that like I want that what I'm looking for, the questions I'm looking for when I'm like validating homework and things like that, and sharing that context of that homework. I'm looking for errors, but also making sure that it's beginner friendly. So like those are the type of things that we can build and things that we have access to today.
I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And I also just wanted to, because I think we're still waiting on that refresh for your slides, but thinking about all of the different use cases for, I think, AI agents as a whole, as you broke it down from fine tuning to also make sure that there are different ways that you can leverage, especially as you get deeper into databases. I guess what other tools in this kind of agentic era do you feel are like very useful or prevalent right now?
So I mean, we know that MCP is a really big game changer for a lot of us these days. There's an MCP server for pretty much incline anything under the sun. I mean, from GitHub
Mhm.
to Kubernetes to Google Drive. So even like OneDrive. So things like that. I think that those are really important. And one of the topics. So I think one of the important things is that you're able to have you have a lot the ability to add more context, and
Mm.
for us in the data world, context is everything. And
Yeah.
so being able to have when I think of tools, I'm thinking of context. So yeah, and then I think there's multiple clients for things like MTP. So consider your own your own app,
Yep.
or even using things uh, ChatGPT or whatever.
Mm. Yep.
And then also, I forgot to also mention that Azure Cosmos DB actually has a CP server.
Oh,
It's
okay.
open source, and you can check it out. And it's here. It's available. Available for you to try. And what it allows you to do is yeah, there we go, yay. But just to finish my thought, it allows you to manage your containers and your databases right there in your MCP client. Okay, so let's go ahead and thank you to the Reactor team for getting us up and running. But just to back up here on just the concept of agents. Agents are LLM powered apps that we give instructions or instructions or some sort of input. They get outputted with tools, and they give us an output based on what we need from them. So based on some specific instructions that we need from them. So moving along here, let me come to the next slide here. So, one of the things that's really important about agents is that it just makes your automation more resilient. When we're thinking about, the modern workday, not only are we thinking about getting things done, we're thinking about the systems that we want to have to get things done and make it so that our systems make it easy for these processes to be repeatable and scalable. And so when we're thinking about that with agents, we want to think about how to spend less time doing common manual things like structuring data, or even working with additional tools, or in this case is assigning people to particular tasks.
Mm.
And so some of the challenges that organizations are facing these days with building agentic systems is incompatibility. This is the same kind of challenges that we're facing here in data world. They're the same kind of problems that no matter what you focus on, your focus area on, like you're running into these challenges. So inconsistency across frameworks. But simple tool calling, it's not very customizable. Maybe it's not easy to set up multiple agent communication patterns. Remember, we want our agent to do one thing and one thing really well. And so if you can't, have another agent to be able to take on the second part of the workload, that can cause issues. Integrations, issues with integrations, the ability to debug locally, those are really important. Even the ability to debug across on things like code spaces, or just like containerized environments. And then things like observability, guardrails, things like that, compliance are also, something that's really important to a lot of companies and a lot of organizations that are trying to integrate AI agents. And so on Microsoft's end, there's a couple ways that you can essentially, work with agents. So you can have your own, bring your own containers and frameworks and deploy it onto, deploy your AI agents onto that and work with that. You also have the Microsoft Foundry agent service. So this is a platform as a service where, you are just focused on like what your app or how your agents, the behavior of your agents versus like those really nitty gritty configurations. And then finally, software as a service where you have a full kind of fully fledged UI with Copilot Studios with building things like agents. I think this final version of this slide, I think, has a really great way of looking at just these different ways. From development speed in terms of getting set up, that process is going to be a lot faster with if you're going to the right, and to the left you have a lot more. Going to the left, you have a lot. From right to left, you have a lot more control and customization.
Yeah, I love how you, so sorry to cut you off, Jasmine, but I love how you pointed that out. I know that not in this episode that we have today, but in some of our previous episodes, we had viewers had commented just on, to your point, the speed of being able to develop, especially in this integrated way. And then also, now that things are easier to be made faster, now that AI is being democratized and it is cheaper and more scalable, the right to left view of control, visibility, it's not on here, but the operational of it all, being able to observe really that end-to-end process. Couldn't have said better myself. Just wanted to call that out.
Oh yeah, thank you for calling it out. And I think it's very interesting because we see this again, like I was saying before with agents. We have separate agents for separate tasks. Yeah. When I'm thinking about just the idea of cloud computing and how much control we want to have over our VMs. Do we even want to have VMs? Is serverless important? Like things like that. So. It's really interesting to see these patterns, across all these different applications. And just moving ahead, either way, the process is still the same, right? You provide a model, instructions, and tools, and just what's really different is just the mechanism of how you do that, right? But today I want to talk a little bit about another way that you can create agents which is with the Microsoft Agent framework. So this takes all the great bits of maybe some SDKs that you might be familiar with. So AutoGen, which came, homegrown here at Microsoft from Microsoft Research. Also Semantic Kernel, Foundry SDK, Agent M365 Agent SDK, you get that in the Microsoft Agent Framework. So not only, and just also add, these are not meant to, or the Agent Framework is not meant to replace these. You can work with these seamlessly with the Agent Framework, and we'll see an example of that actually with in the future in a moment here. So you're probably wondering, okay, so if I have, I can have a SaaS platform, or, there's options for a SaaS platform to build an agent there. There's so many ways I can build in. And one of the main reasons why you might want to consider, working with code for agents is that full control. Being able to, grab any tool you need, any data source, and it's just not as limited. So especially for organizations where compliance is a big issue, maybe they can't rely on many external tools. Like maybe they have to build their own tools. That allows you, gives you the option to be compliant without constraint. Also, working locally, so local experimentation, so no need to focus on the cloud, especially depending on, also even depending on like where your agent is or where your LLM is. Like, so say you're using something like locally, like Olama or something like that. You can, local experimentation becomes super easy. And then finally, portability, right? Your code, you can deploy when you're ready to deploy. You can, easily move from local to cloud. There's many ways to do that. You can do it in Visual Studio Code. You can do it in the command line. There's so many ways to do that these days. So let's talk a little bit more about that idea of customization with Microsoft Agent Framework. So this is kind of like all the AI services and all the like models and things that work with the Microsoft Agent Framework. So pretty much all your typical run-of-the-mill, so OpenAI, Azure OpenAI, Anthropic, and even thinking about local models, like I was saying, Olama, Foundry Local, things like that, memory services, agent service, just of course MCP. So just the whole run of the mill, so it's fully customizable, fully integratable with what you have today. Now, there's two concepts when we think about the idea of the agent framework. So, of course, there's agents, right, where you can build agents on the fly, makes it really easy. But there's also this concept of workflows. And so, with an agent, these are when we're thinking about multi-agent setups, when we're working with more than one agent, you are normally thinking about some sort of reasoning and decision making type of task. So maybe one agent is responsible for thinking of, like, say, like we have like an idea generator for in an app, right? And so maybe you have one that's taking your ideas and like making sense of them, and maybe you have one agent that's like the person who is like being critical about these choices, or maybe there's one that's prioritizing which ideas that you should focus on first. So they're all kind of talking to each other and working with each other to give you a desired outcome, right? And there's many ways to or orchestrate your agents to kind of communicate together. So there's things like group chat, there's even like singular or sequential, things like that. So and then the other one is workflow orchestration in the agent framework. So this is a mix of business processes and agents. And so what's the difference here between the two is that workflow orchestration is when you have really like a set number of tasks that you'll be doing. So for example, in this slide, you're generating outline, research and generating sections, and compile and generate the outcome. I think one of the things that's really important is that the nature of how your app or your agent's work stays the same, right? But the output is different. But and so this is where workflow can be a lot more workflow orchestrating can be a lot more useful if you are looking for, and I don't even say rigid because like the outcome would be different based on your input, but it can give you a lot more guardrails on how to set up or essentially have a workflow, right? So essentially steps that might contain agents or not. So one additional question that I know a lot of folks have been thinking about when they think about the agent framework is, do I have to leave semantic kernel? Do I have to leave AutoGen? And the answer is no. But if that is an option for you, or if that's something that you are actually considering, there is a tool that was announced at Ignite that allows this migration to be super, super easy. Definitely check it out if that is of interest to you. Okay, So that's a little bit about agents and the Microsoft Agent Framework. We're going to see that shortly here, but I just want to quickly touch on Azure Cosmos DB, and then we will get into my demo here. So Azure Cosmos DB, we've talked about before, our NoSQL database for AI apps, and it makes it super easy to really grow your app. So in fact, OpenAI uses Cosmos DB to store their chat history. And another thing that's really key about Cosmos DB is it's highly reliable and it's easily scalable. So we have features like auto scale where it meets the demand if you have a lot of growth, you have a lot of people using your app at the same time. So like in the case of OpenAI, when they grew pretty much overnight. And then next is just some scenarios that you can kind of consider with Cosmos DB. And these companies at the bottom, these are all kind of ones that are reaching for these type of scenarios. So RAG, so retrieval augmented generation, where you get your LLM and your data, and you depending on what your input is, you get a particular output with some additional context. Saving conversational history, semantic caching to reduce things like latency. So maybe there's a similar answer to a question. Instead of going to the LLM and saving on spending money on, or it's not spending money, but spending on tokens, you can reduce your token consumption by using things like semantic caching and getting that answer, that previous answers. And then finally, of course, powering up your apps with AI agents. So things like agentic memory, logging, things like that. So some of the new things that came to Cosmos DB at Ignite were a bunch of different features that focused on vector search. So a lot of improvements in performance, updates in vector. So all of these are generally available as well. And with the modifiable vector indexes coming in early 2026. So this feature essentially was going to allow you to be able to change your vector policies without having to delete your dictator and create it again. And then also with the concept of full text search, so fuzzy search is available. So approximate text search, and more language support, and things like that. So a lot more of a richer experience with Azure Cosmos DB and building these AI-powered, these agentic apps. Now, so I'm gonna move on to my demo here. But before I do want to. I have a couple of things I want to share. So one of the things that is that the agent framework actually has is this ability to let you work with your agents or test out your agents locally on your machine through this UI. So let me just go ahead and.
And while you pull that up, Jasmine, I think that's a perfect segue into one of the questions I see here from Vinay's751, which is, what is Foundry local and does it provide the ability to run models locally?
Yes, I mean, that's exactly what Foundry local is. So yeah, so I believe that's available as a VS Code extension. Don't quote me on that, but yes, but exactly that's what it is. So I would highly recommend, and I can throw up the some docs on that as well too. Great question. Thank you for your question. So on the topic of local development, here I am in the Agent Framework Dev UI. So this is an addition onto the Agent Framework that allows you to play around with your agents, the agent that you've built locally. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to first show you kind of what it looks like in the back end here. So let me just open up open that up real quickly. Let me find try and look for my, all right, there we go. All right, there we go. Okay, so what I have in the background here, I'm just gonna minimize this just in case I can't see these. So what I have in the background here is a small little agent UI demo here, where all I'm really doing is just like create. All I did was create an agent that created some jokes. It's creating some jokes, and so what I'm doing here is instantiating, creating my agent, and then going and giving it credentials. I'm actually using setting up my credentials with the Azure CLI, so AZ login, and then I set some environment variables. And then to launch Dev UI, you install a package pretty much, and then you use the serve function to with the agent that you want, and then it'll open up a little browser with you if you have this auto open. Auto open parameter set. So let me go ahead and open this up in the agent UI, Dev UI, and let me just refresh to make sure that everything's working. So you can see my agent is called the Joker. And so tell me a joke about pirates. And then it'll answer. And okay, great. Now say that I have a picture, right? I'm going to add some additional context. So say I have a picture of a clownfish here, and I'm going to go ahead and add that. Tell me a joke about this. Okay, and there we go. And so you can see that I will add all types of context there. Okay. I see also a question about the features in Cosmos DB, and what's the how they work with Azure AI Search. That's not really a compete thing. It's really just they are the ability for them all to work together. So yeah, I think it's important to just consider that there's not always one tool for the job, and there's always different ways to kind of build out your AI system. And I think one of the important things to know about Azure AI Search is that Cosmos DB is mainly used for operational data, and Azure AI Search is kind of that and everything else. So you might want to consider, so you might find yourself in a situation where you're using both. Okay, so my app here is, so my little joking agent is working nice. And like I think another thing is that you can kind of see kind of the events happening. If I had any tools associated with, I would see it over here as well. Okay, so so this was actually really helpful for me when I was building out this demo. My demo is still work in progress, but I'm really proud to show you what I have so far. But before I go into the demo, I wanted to show you a little bit about what my app is actually, what endpoint, or the kind of endpoint of my app. So I think this was like maybe Ignite last year or maybe Build last year. I had a demo with someone else on the Cosmos DB team, and we are both cat lovers, and so we essentially created some synthetic data focused around cat furniture. And so I came across it again, and I was like, oh, this would be so fun to make a visualization of this. And so this is what it came up with. So it's a Python app. I use Streamlit for the front end. And so I have essentially this app called Catnook Designer. And so essentially you pick the theme and the vibe of your furniture, like what you want, how do you want it to look in your home. You pick a color palette, your budget, and then you get some recommendations. So before I go into how the full demo in my slides, I want to just show you what I did first before kind of building out the app. I actually went into the agent framework UI and built that out first. So I'm going to just swap to my next screen here, or back to VS Code here, and I'm going to run my furniture UI. Furniture UI, and there we go. And that'll open directly into the browser. And there we are. And so you can see here, I have all these different agents. So one thing that I think you'll see in my app when we hop into the nuts and bolts of my code is that I have all these agents and I have them set up sequentially. So like the designer agent would take my designs or my wish list and then send that and give me some output that I could give to the search agent, and then so on and so forth, all the way to the bundle agent that would, kind of associate some additional things with my purchase. The designer agent, I'm just gonna go ahead and test that out. I think one of the things that I want to continue working on in this app is the ability to be able to add a let me just see if I can find my notepad here. Yes, the ability to add add a workflow, because I think this makes more sense as I was building out. And this actually is a workflow, right? Because it's a very sequential, like each and the same thing's going to happen in the same way every time. So because like everything's gonna go through the designer, and then I want the last thing for the bundle to be the bundling setup. So what I have in here is just some let me just fix my typos there. Some what I want my style colors to be like, and how I want the vibe for my furniture to look. So so my style colors, I'm setting some hex codes, and then I'm looking for something that's natural and calm. So let's see what my designer agent comes up with. It's tasked to just give me some JSON data, and there we go. So it says, it says my common natural style, my preferred materials. I said natural, so so think cotton, wool, and then these colors are actually the same colors that are here in the designer is actually sage green and off-white. So at that point, I would, keep on going down this list and all the way down to my bundle agent. So let me just show you what that looks like in a demo here. And I'm going to just hop into the next slide, and this should just play automatically, but I'm going to just let it play. Okay. So again, you've seen this before, and I'm just kind of just showing off the different options in the app and the colors, and I'm just jacking up the budget here, and then I go ahead and grab some recommendations and just give that a moment. And there we are. And there I have my personalized recommendations. This item clearly is not out of stock, but this is still something I'm super excited to finish up and continue working on to build it out. But essentially what happened is based on my wish list, the things that I wanted in my design, I was able to send this all to my different agents and get a personalized recommendation. So let me see if I can.
I have a question, Jasmine, really quick.
Yeah.
Have you used this for your own fur babies or own cats at all?
I have not, but I do think that if I did, I think Toby, my cat, I think he would appreciate it. But it's a good idea. It's a good, nice test to try. So let me see if I can open up. I'm having some issue opening up my my taskbar here. Let me just see if I can get it here. Okay, perfect. Okay. So kind of just stepping through the code here a bit. The app.py file is that's where all my Streamlit code is. And what I really like Streamlit is that you just kind of build your app with Python, or build your front end with Python. But kind of going to my main.py file, this is kind of like the real like big part of the app, or like the kind of the main part of the app. So I have all these different agents with all these different instructions. So you can see the designer agent that's taking in my adjectives. So, you know, cozy, natural, and my swatches, and, you know, picking out some preferred materials based on that. And you can see this is how it responds. And again, here I am setting up my agent with those instructions. And then here is my, essentially my text context, or my prompt, right? So design, to analyze these design inputs based on what I have here. And I just do that all the way down to the bundling agents. And I'm just kind of scrolling through here a bit. Let's see. And then that's, you know, essentially once I get to the end, then I get all of, you know, I get, you know, my item and then my recommendation. Now, one additional thing here is the tool. So my tool is actually a search tool that looks for searches Cosmos DB, actually. So one of the things that this is actually where I reach for a semantic kernel. So semantic kernel is really great for working with vector databases. This feature, like this functionality, is already there, and it works with quite a lot of different quite a lot of different databases and data stores. And so so what's really great about semantic kernel and agent framework working together is that you can actually create a search tool pretty seamlessly here in here between these two SDKs. So when we're talking about like if we need to replace one with the other, this is a case where they work like pretty seamlessly. And so the way that it works with Cosmos DB is essentially I'm creating my collection, and then that's what I do here, and then I find my products, and then I create my search function, and then I so essentially when my search agent is looking for those particular items based on that JSON that gets returned from my designer agents, then my query, it uses my query, and it uses the number of results that I want to return what's in Cosmos DB. So we can actually even take a look at what's in Cosmos DB as well. Let me open that up. So let me find it. Actually, let me just open up Cosmos, the browser. I think that makes a lot more sense. Let me just find it in here. Okay. Okay, so here I am in Azure, and these are all my my collection, my product collection. You can see all of my product items in here. You can see this huge field called a content vector, and this is just a combination of the tags and the color variants and the material, all turned into vectors. And so here we're using, I believe the index we're using is geostatic, and let me show you real quickly how you can set up vector search, or be able to do vector search as well in Cosmos DB. So when you create your container, you have a feature where you can turn on the ability of vector search, but in order to turn it on for your Cosmos DB account, you need to come into features under settings and then just turn on vector search for NoSQL API. What I'm using is the Cosmos DB NoSQL API. So essentially what's happening is that if I'm searching, when I get the JSON data from my design agent, I do a vector search to find items that are close or somewhat close to what's here in my list of products. And so that's kind of how the app works from beginning to end. But yeah, this was a lot of fun to work with. This is my first agent framework app that I've built. So I'm super excited to continue building it out. So this demo is not ready quite yet. The sample is not ready quite yet for distribution, but I'm hoping that by the new year, this should be ready for anybody to fork and try themselves.
Thank you so much for walking us through all of that. That was incredible just to kind of watch the full end-to-end process, especially how you thought through some of your fun ideas, getting us to the cats of it all. I guess one other question I have, and I think this is something that we've heard recently from viewers as well, is what was maybe like your most unexpected but favorite part in the process? Because it can get sometimes, I think, cumbersome of this database. I mean, look at the security sometimes if we're scaling up versus what type of AI service or model should we use, and it can get bogged down. So we'd love to hear a little bit more of that from your perspective.
Yeah, I think one of the things that got me really excited was the ability to use the UI tool in the agent framework. I didn't realize that was an option until I started poking around in the GitHub repository. And this makes me very reminiscent of this time when I used to work with this tool called, I think it was the bot framework. And they had this like app that essentially you could like build out your bot and like it would like generate the .NET, or I think it was JavaScript or Python code for you. And so that was a really fun to work with. And so it was very reminiscent when I was able to do that here in the UI tool with Agent Framework. And again, like I said, this is the first time I really worked with Agent Framework, building a demo like this. And so it was nice having that visual. On the Cosmos DB side, I think one of the things that not surprising to me because I look at Cosmos DB all the time, but one of the things that I really like about Cosmos DB is the ability to upload my JSON file. So I had a JSON file on my products, and I just threw the embeddings in that as well, just to make it easy for me. And I just uploaded that. And I really love that feature in Cosmos DB. And also that you can also work with Cosmos DB directly in VS Code.
Got it. And there's a question which I think you might have answered, but just for clarity, from RWU NIARD. He was wondering, or they were wondering, if you feed the whole JSON into the embedding algorithm.
Oh no. So I only feed the things that the user essentially would be searching, or inputs that they would be searching for. So I don't feed the hex code into the embedding algorithm, but I do feed I've turned the color options into embeddings, especially as well as tags and things like that. So that's what I think it's important to be decisive or choosy on what you turn your embeddings into, because that can really affect your precision.
Got it. I think last question, maybe, if there's nothing else in the chat before we hop off. For Azure Cosmos DB, that's really the linchpin of today's databases for how we're thinking around the entire AI conversation. But what maybe are some things that you're really looking forward to for Azure Cosmos DB coming up in the new year, looking towards build in 2026?
I am excited to just see how the concept of agentic memory takes off. I think it's a topic that we don't touch on too much because I think we're all thinking about kind of the end result, like how we want our agents to work, or what we want them to do. But that is part of the how, and that's really important for additional context for our agents. So I'm excited to see how that grows. I think one thing that's also really important, and we worked on some content or video series on this, focused around design patterns. That's a really key part when we're working with NoSQL data, because the ability to let your data grow and change over time is nice, but that also is kind of double-edged sword because it can be unwieldy, right? And so you got to think about how you want to manage and work with your data, especially in the times of AI where, the way that you manage your data can affect how much you spend in tokens. So things like that, I think, are actually really key. And I think for me personally, I think that's maybe a pursuit I want to think about as well, because not only is this a problem with Cosmos DB, but this is a problem with other databases as well.
Couldn't agree more. I think we actually have another question in the chat. Again from Vinay's751. Coming back to Foundry Local, does it have any token limitations? Does it have and support the GPT model family? And then a question there about Azure account.
Okay. Yeah, so the Azure free account has definitely changed over time. So I'm not sure what its current status is. But in terms of Foundry Local, remember that let's take a look at the docs real quick, because I want to make sure that I give you all good information here. So I'm just opening it up here in the browser here. I'll just throw this up on the screen so you all can see what I'm looking at here. So looks like this is, so one thing to keep in mind, this is currently in preview, and you do have a couple requirements. It should be fine for most apps. Let's take a look at architecture. Let's see if we can find your answer here, Vinay's. Let's see. So we have Foundry Local Service, a REST server that provides standard interface. And then let's see, model management. It creates has a bunch of tools. And let's see if I can find, some additional information on here. I think you might want to check the GitHub repository as well. I saw that there was also a related GitHub repository. I'm just going to go back here and comb through the docs there. Also, there's happens to be a Discord. And so if these are questions that you actually are interested in, or you have specifics around Foundry Local, I would actually recommend that you go and check out the AI or the Microsoft Foundry Discord. I'm just going to throw up some resources here for folks as well, since we're on that topic. If you want to check out more about Microsoft Foundry, go to ai.azure.com. Of course, you can go to the short link for the SDK, and also check out the short link for Foundry documentation. And then definitely check out the Foundry Discord. There's all kinds of interesting conversations happening there. And Vinay, I was not able to answer your question 1,000%, but someone will have the answer for you in that Discord. I don't want to give you wrong information, but great question. Great question as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, it looks like I think that is going to be it for us. Hello to our viewers in Brazil. Thank you for commenting, and thank you for the view today. But yeah, Jasmine, it was incredible having you on. Thank you so much for the time to just come chat with us about all things Cosmos DB, AI agents, really actually getting into the weeds a little bit of Microsoft Agent Framework and literally walking us through a demo. So very much appreciated. We'd love to have you back sometime. And for our viewers, it's on screen. There's a whole bunch of additional resources that you can go to for more questions. Vinay's, I would again recommend the Discord. There's a team that is in there, and they're very active. So more questions, more depth for you all. And then, yeah, just for anyone who has been viewing the series as a whole, appreciate you so much. Thank you again for just coming and joining us to hear more about all of these incredible products and all the great resources and skilling that goes so that you learn and understand how to really leverage them to make the most out of it. With that, yeah. Oh, sorry. One last thing. Thank you to our production team and our people who make this show happen. Without them, we would not be able to bring this to you. So yes, with that, appreciate it. And until next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find our survey link on the screen or in the chat. And we'll see you at the next one.